Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Commonwealth of Virginia and why I think the Commonwealth is due for a Republican comeback, not just in 2022, but beyond. And we'll talk about what I think the Virginia GOP is doing correct. We'll be taking a look at the primary results from Tuesday night, which are good news for Republicans, as well as some previous Virginia election results to kind of prove that for the GOP, this state isn't too far gone like Colorado and other states that were, once Bush 2004 states that have now, become either likely or safe Democrats. So we'll take a look at all of that in just a second. But first, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing down below, hitting the bell notification, and liking this video if you enjoy. It really helps out the channel, and it helps me make more videos like these. So let's get straight into it. So on Tuesday night, Virginia had its congressional primaries for some of its congressional districts. Other congressional districts had conventions, so they didn't really have primaries. And if we take a look at Virginia's 2nd congressional district, Jen Kiggins, who was by far the better candidate in terms of electability in the district, she won her primary by a landslide against Jerome Bell, who was a far-right candidate propped up by the Democratic Party in the primary in hopes that he would win the general election. He lost, thankfully, for the Republicans and only got 27% of the vote, but had he advanced to the general election, it certainly would have put this seat in jeopardy. So the Republican Party getting behind Jen Kiggins, Republicans from both the more establishment wing, the more MAGA wing, all really seemed to back her at the end of the day. She ended up winning by a colossal margin. She's very much a suburban type of Republican, can appeal to moderates. So that was a huge win for the Republicans. Obviously, this district here is very winnable. It's a Biden +3 district only. It only voted for Biden by 3 points. All you really need to do to win this district is win Virginia Beach, and I think in 2022 Republicans are almost guaranteed to win Virginia Beach back. The rest of the district is fairly conservative. You have southern parts of Chesapeake City, which are redder than the rest, and then of course you have these other counties here, and the Eastern Shore, which tend to be redder areas of the state as a whole. So it goes from a +5 Biden state to just a +3 Biden state. And really, all you need to do is win Virginia Beach, essentially, to win this district. And I think Kiggins is certainly going to do that. So in my prediction, I put Virginia 2nd as a lean red district. I stand by that. It could even be a likely, if it gets about 6 points or so. But you are versing an incumbent, so I don't expect a huge margin of victory here. But nonetheless, I think Kiggins was clearly the best candidate to win in this district for the Republicans. So that's already a pickup that they're almost guaranteed just based on redistricting. But then we also have the 7th congressional district, which is Abigail Spanberger's district. This district got considerably bluer. It went from a Biden +1 district to a Biden +6. So she's put in a better position, but keep in mind the state of Virginia had a 12-point swing to the right from 2020 to 2021. So it's very likely that you could see Republicans pick off this seat by a couple of points. I think it's very possible. And if we look at the primary results, Yesli Vega, who was a Latina candidate, again, very much tailored to the suburbs, ended up winning by about 5 points over the other contenders. And, like Kiggins, is definitely very electable in the suburbs. She kind of represents an exurban area, but there are some blue parts. Obviously, Prince William County, Fredericksburg, Stafford County is, sort of a lean red county, but can vote blue sometimes. So I think 2020, at least for now, kind of maxed out Democrats' gains in the suburbs and exurbs. So I think you'll see this district swing back decently to the right. I think you'll have Stafford go Republican by at least 6 or 7 points. Obviously this area of Prince William County is a lot bluer, but if the Republicans can run up the margins, they're likely to pick this district up as well. So I don't think any of these candidates were as bad as Jerome Bell. They all seemed like fairly electable candidates, but the Virginia GOP, since Glenn Youngkin, has really started to realize that if they run the right candidates in Virginia, they're a lot more successful, because Virginia is not as blue as it appears. A lot of Virginia voters who were, lean Republican voters, independents, by the way, in Virginia tend to lean Republican anyways, they were just sort of repulsed by the Trump brand of the party and not so much the Republican Party entirely, because when candidates run on the right issues like Glenn Youngkin did, like these other candidates are likely to in 2022, they see a lot of success and they take back a lot of territory that Republicans thought were lost in, Northern Virginia and other suburban counties. But ultimately, a very good night for the Virginia GOP. They had a convention for Virginia's 10th district. Hung Cao, who is a Vietnamese Army veteran, won the convention there by a considerable amount. He's running in probably the toughest district for Republicans, so while Virginia's 7th and Virginia's 2nd, I think, are at this point likely to be pickups, Virginia's 10th is really up in the air. It's a Biden plus 18 district, which is a really big hurdle to overcome, but you have to think about this district was almost won by Glenn Youngkin back in 2021. He only lost it by about 4 percentage points, so given that there's no statewide elections on the ballot in Virginia in 2022, it's possible that Republicans can get the turnout high enough to get Hung Cao over the finish line. Again, he was kind of chosen to kind of appeal to Asian voters, particularly in Loudoun County, to kind of focus on more of those economic issues. And again, Loudoun County was once a county that was only a lean Democratic county in 2008 and 2012. And now it's a safe Democratic county. Glenn Youngkin lost it by a likely margin. He only lost it by about 10 or 11, so almost safe. But Loudoun County in particular swings a lot more than Prince William and Fairfax County do. And I think with the right candidate, it's certainly within reach. You know, Sabato's crystal ball moved this district into likely Democratic. I think it's lean. I think Hung Cao will bring it within single digits easily, about 4 or 5 points. But, you know, him winning is still an uphill battle, but it's not impossible. You know, he was certainly, I think, the best fit candidate for the district. It really depends how he campaigns. The district only got slightly redder, though. It moved about a point to the right. It used to encompass Winchester, Frederick County, and Clark County. Now it's kind of moved south. Fauquier County is in the district. So virtually not much of a huge shift in terms of the partisan lean, but I think the fact that Glenn Youngkin almost won this district and that Loudoun County is a much more elastic suburban county than others could potentially see a flip there. But certainly if there is, it really shows you that there is sort of a reversal going on in Virginia's suburbs, at least with the right kind of candidates. You know, if we go back to 2020, Donald Trump was obliterated in the Virginia suburbs. You know, he lost not only Nova by large margins, but traditionally conservative suburbs like Virginia Beach, Chesterfield County, these are Stafford, you know, these are areas where Republicans, even in 2008 and 2012, which were tough years already for them, they won. And even in 2016, Donald Trump won Stafford County by 9 points, won Chesterfield by about 2.2, and won Virginia Beach by a little less than 4 points. So, you know, in 2016, Trump was able to win these suburbs by a plurality, Stafford being the only exception. He actually won that by a majority. But in 2020, I think you're really seeing the floor for the Republican parties in general elections. 44% as of right now. Again, Trump could do even worse in the state if he runs in 2024, but I really think that if you have a nominee like DeSantis or another Republican, you'll see Republicans probably get 45, even 46% of the vote in Virginia if they do pay a little bit of attention to it, because I don't think it's exactly lost for the GOP, because a lot of these suburbs aren't necessarily liberal suburbs, but they're suburbs that are kind of repulsed by the Donald Trump brand of politics. And when you bring more moderate Republicans, even Republicans like Glenn Youngkin that are conservative on all the issues, they could still win in these counties. If we pull up the election map for Glenn Youngkin, he was able to win Stafford County by 11 points. He was able to win Virginia Beach by 8 points. He was able to win Chesterfield County by about 5 points. And again, this was an off-year election, but normally these off-year elections tend to be very competitive. And, you know, even if this was a general election environment, Glenn Youngkin probably wouldn't have won just based on where Virginia's at right now, but he probably would have come within just a couple of points. I think if it was a general election environment, you probably would have seen Glenn Youngkin maybe get 47% of the vote across Virginia, which still would have been a big improvement on the mere 44% they got back in 2020. So it really depends on the candidates you run in Virginia. And I think in 2022, Republicans are playing their cards right. They're running the best possible candidates to flip these districts. And if they're able to flip these districts in 22, if they're able to take back the state Senate in 23, I think the state party can build up an apparatus in which they can actually become competitive in Virginia once again. Now, of course, it really depends where the national party ends up. Republicans nationally need candidates that are going to do better in the suburbs. Ron DeSantis is already that type of candidate. You know, in Florida, he's probably going to outperform in the suburbs relative to Donald Trump in 2022, not just because of the red wave year, but also because of his personal appeal and popularity in the state. You know, even for a state that's relatively close in general elections, somehow Ron DeSantis is incredibly popular as a governor, and, you know, he's likely to win his re-election by a large amount. You know, many people are speculating he'll run in 2024, potentially even if Donald Trump jumps in the race. And we'll make a video on Trump versus DeSantis at some point in the future, how that race would likely turn out. But, you know, if you have a nominee on the top of the ticket other than Donald Trump, they're going to do better in Virginia than Trump did. I can almost guarantee you. 44% really was the floor for Virginia, because these suburbs are, while they're diversifying, while they're changing, while they are getting more liberal, you know, the exurbs themselves aren't too far gone. And, you know, Glenn Youngkin didn't win any of the Nova counties. He didn't win Loudoun. He didn't win Fairfax. He didn't win Prince William, but he didn't have to. He ran up the margins in the rural areas of the state large enough that he only had to get within 11 points in Loudoun County. He only had to get within 15 in Prince William to still win statewide. And the other suburbs around the state, Chesterfield County, Virginia Beach, in, you know, southeastern Virginia, aren't trending away from the GOP nearly as fast as Nova is. So that's certainly a bright spot for the Republicans as well. These areas are certainly winnable for the GOP. This part of Virginia is not as liberal, isn't trending as far away from them as Northern Virginia is. So if Republicans can really set up a ground game and a turnout operation around the state, you know, they could potentially win their first Senate seat in a long time in 2024 or 2026, depending on the national environment. You know, if somehow a Democrat wins in 24 and Glenn Youngkin runs for the Senate seat in 26, you're going to see a super competitive race in Virginia, which we would have never been talking about before 2021. You know, it looked like the Republican Party was falling off a cliff in the state of Virginia. They were bleeding voters. They were losing. And now I think Glenn Youngkin has certainly awakened the Republican Party in the Old Dominion state, because before that, you really didn't see Republicans do well even in the off-year races. You know, back in 2017, Ed Gillespie only got 45% of the vote. Donald Trump only got 44%, so barely an improvement there. Ralph Northam outperforming. Obviously, 2017 was a low point for Donald Trump. You just had Charlottesville. You had the Democrats energized in the state, so it's not too surprising that Ed Gillespie lost this race. The other down-ballot candidates did a lot better. You had John Adams for Attorney General get 46.7% of the vote, and you had Jill Vogel get 47.3%. Now, a candidate like her could easily win a federal office in Virginia Senate, provided there's a good national environment for Republicans. So, you know, the Republican Party really did sort of hit its low point in 2020 in the state, and I think it's likely to see a resurgence, not necessarily to the point where they're winning it on the presidential level, but where they're a lot more competitive in these other races than we otherwise would have seen in the Trump era. And provided, again, that Trump doesn't run in 2024, I think the GOP in Virginia is going to become much more viable. And, you know, the Democrats are going to have to work harder to keep this state in their column. Before the 2021 elections, you know, Democrats were dominant in the state. They had a trifecta in state government. They had won every statewide office since 2009. They'd won every Senate race in the state since 2008. So they had complete dominance over the state. And I think Republicans are, you know, provided the Virginia GOP plays its cards right, you know, they are on track, I think, to make a comeback in the state, at least in the short term, but perhaps even in the long term if they develop sort of a counterpart to the former Reid machine in Nevada, where the state was always close, but the party was always able to eke out a victory. And perhaps we could see that in Virginia over the next decade. It really does depend where the realignment is happening, whether the Republican Party can attract more minority voters, particularly in Northern Virginia. Asian voters are a huge constituency up there. Obviously Hispanic voters too. But if they can chip away just 5-10% of the margins into Democrats, Virginia is very, very much in play. And again, this wasn't inevitable either. If we go back to 2021 and we look at the Republican primary, the Republicans almost nominated Amanda Chase, who you know, described herself as Trump in heels, was running far to the right. And while she appealed to the base heavily, she would have gotten crushed in a general election, even in an off year like 2021. So she was leading in the primary polling. Without the convention polling, she was leading. Now, you know, Youngkin really wasn't, I think he's right here. He kind of surged sort of towards the end, but all of the polling showed that he still was not the favorite going into the Republican primary. Now, the Virginia GOP earlier on, though, opted not to have a primary. Instead, they wanted a convention. You know, Amanda Chase and others kind of complained that the race was being stolen from them. But because the Republican Party did this, Glenn Youngkin won the Republican nomination and ultimately went on to win Republicans' first statewide office in about 12 years. So this wasn't inevitable. You know, it really depends on the quality of candidates, particularly in a suburban state like Virginia. So really, that's it for today's video. Please leave your thoughts down below. Like this video if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell notification so you don't miss any more videos I put out. And as always, again, thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.